The wedding bells had barely stopped ringing when the nightmare began. On what should have been the happiest night of her life, 24-year-old Amanda Richardson vanished without a trace from her honeymoon suite at the Grand Oak Resort in upstate New York. Her new husband, David Richardson, woke up to blood on the carpet, a shattered champagne glass, and his bride's wedding ring lying abandoned on the bathroom floor. What followed was 6 months of desperate searches, false leads, and a community torn apart by suspicion. But nothing could have prepared investigators for the horrifying truth they would uncover right under their noses. Amanda Marie Thompson had always dreamed of a fairy tale wedding. The 24-year-old elementary school teacher from Albany had planned every detail of her special day with meticulous care. Her dress, a vintage-inspired gown with delicate lace sleeves, had been her grandmother's. The venue, Grand Oak Resort, overlooked the Hudson Valley with breathtaking views of autumn foliage. Friends and family described Amanda as radiant, glowing with happiness as she walked down the aisle toward David Richardson, the 28-year-old software engineer she'd met 2 years earlier at a coffee shop near the university. David seemed like the perfect match for Amanda. He was quiet, thoughtful, and completely devoted to her. Their courtship had been a whirlwind romance filled with weekend getaways, surprise flowers, and long conversations about their future together. Amanda's best friend, Jessica Martinez, later told police that Amanda had called her just hours before the ceremony, practically singing with joy. She kept saying she couldn't believe how lucky she was, Jessica recalled, tears streaming down her face. She said David made her feel like the most precious thing in the world. The wedding ceremony itself was everything Amanda had dreamed of. 200 guests witnessed the couple exchange vows under a canopy of golden maple trees. David's voice cracked with emotion as he promised to love and protect Amanda for the rest of their lives. The reception lasted until nearly midnight, with Amanda dancing in her father's arms to their special song, "The Way You Look Tonight." Security cameras captured the newlyweds leaving the reception at 11:47 p.m., Amanda's veil trailing behind her as David carried her across the threshold of their honeymoon suite. What happened next would haunt investigators for months. According to David's initial statement to police, he and Amanda had opened a bottle of champagne in their suite and talked about their future together. Amanda had gone to the bathroom to change out of her wedding dress, while David stepped onto the balcony to call his parents and thank them for the beautiful ceremony. When he returned 15 minutes later, the bathroom door was ajar. Amanda was nowhere to be found, and there was blood on the white carpet near the bed. Detective Sarah Collins, a 15-year veteran of the Albany Police Department, was called to the scene at 2:30 a.m. What she found defied explanation. The honeymoon suite showed clear signs of a struggle: overturned furniture, a broken champagne flute, and droplets of blood leading from the bathroom toward the main door. But the door was locked from the inside, the windows were sealed shut, and there was no other way out of the room. Amanda's wedding dress hung neatly in the closet, but her going-away outfit, a blue sundress and white sandals, was missing. Most puzzling of all was Amanda's wedding ring, found on the bathroom floor as if it had been deliberately placed there. David's behavior immediately raised red flags for Detective Collins. While most people in his situation would be frantic, David seemed oddly composed, almost detached. He answered questions methodically, his story never varying, but there was something unsettling about his calm demeanor. When asked why he hadn't immediately called for help upon discovering Amanda missing, David explained that he had first searched the resort grounds, thinking she might have gone for a walk to clear her head. Amanda sometimes needed space when she was overwhelmed, he told investigators. I thought maybe the excitement of the day had gotten to her. The initial search for Amanda was massive. Hundreds of volunteers combed through the dense forests surrounding the resort. Divers searched nearby lakes and rivers. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging flew grid patterns over thousands of acres. Amanda's photo was plastered on billboards across 3 states, and her disappearance became front-page news. The FBI joined the investigation, bringing in behavioral analysts and forensic experts. But despite the extensive efforts, no trace of Amanda was found. As weeks turned into months, suspicion increasingly focused on David. His alibi for the crucial 15 minutes when Amanda vanished couldn't be verified. The phone record showed he had indeed called his parents, but the call lasted only 3 minutes, not 15. Neighbors in David's apartment complex came forward with disturbing stories about arguments they'd overheard between the couple in the weeks leading up to the wedding. One neighbor, Mrs. Patricia Hendricks, reported hearing Amanda crying and pleading with someone to please stop just 2 nights before the ceremony. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Amanda's sister, Rebecca, discovered something troubling while going through Amanda's belongings. Hidden in Amanda's jewelry box was a small digital recorder, the kind used by journalists or students. When police played back the contents, they heard Amanda's voice, shaky and frightened, recording what she called her insurance policy. In the recording, dated just 1 week before the wedding, Amanda described finding disturbing items in David's apartment, photographs of women who looked remarkably similar to her, newspaper clippings about missing persons cases, and a collection of women's jewelry that didn't belong to her. But the most chilling revelation came from Amanda's final entry on the recorder. Her voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I found the room in the basement. David doesn't know I know about it. There are chains on the wall, and I think there might be someone down there. I can hear crying sometimes at night. I should call the police, but what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just being paranoid? The wedding is in 3 days. Maybe after we're married, I can get him help. Maybe I can save him." The recording ended abruptly with the sound of footsteps and David's voice calling Amanda's name. Armed with this new evidence, Detective Collins obtained a warrant to search David's apartment. What they found in the basement would become one of the most horrifying discoveries in Albany's criminal history. Behind a false wall, investigators uncovered a hidden room equipped with restraints, surveillance equipment, and personal belongings from at least 6 different women. Among the items was Amanda's missing blue sundress, neatly folded and placed on a shelf like a trophy. But Amanda herself was nowhere to be found in the basement. The room appeared to have been hastily cleaned, with traces of bleach still lingering in the air. David, when confronted with the evidence, maintained his innocence, claiming he had never seen the hidden room before and suggesting that someone else must have access to his basement. His lawyer argued that David was being framed, possibly by the real perpetrator who had been using his basement without his knowledge. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, a housekeeper at the Grand Oak Resort, came forward with information she had been too frightened to share earlier. On the night of Amanda's disappearance, Maria had been working late, cleaning rooms on the floor below the honeymoon suite. Around midnight, she had seen David carrying what appeared to be a large laundry bag toward the service elevator. When their eyes met, David had smiled and explained that he was taking some wedding gifts to his car. Maria thought nothing of it at the time, but after seeing David's photo in the newspaper, she realized the bag had been large enough to contain a person. Security footage from the resort's parking garage confirmed Maria's account. The cameras showed David making multiple trips to his car between midnight and 1:30 a.m., each time carrying bags or boxes. The footage was grainy, but forensic video analysts were able to enhance the images enough to see that David appeared to be struggling with the weight of his cargo. More damning still, the timestamp on the footage directly contradicted David's claim that he had discovered Amanda missing at 2:00 a.m. The final piece of the puzzle came when investigators decided to excavate the area around David's apartment building. Using ground-penetrating radar, they identified several anomalies in the soil behind the building. On a cold February morning, 6 months after Amanda's disappearance, forensic teams began digging. What they found would haunt everyone involved in the case for the rest of their lives. Amanda's body was discovered in a makeshift grave just 50 feet from David's basement window. She had been buried in her blue sundress, the outfit she had planned to wear on her honeymoon. The medical examiner determined that Amanda had died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely from the broken champagne glass found in the honeymoon suite. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Buried alongside Amanda were the remains of 3 other women, all bearing striking physical similarities to Amanda. Young, blonde, petite, with bright smiles that had once lit up rooms just as Amanda's had. It became clear that Amanda had not been David's first victim, but rather the culmination of a carefully planned pattern of predatory behavior. The trial of David Richardson began 8 months later and became one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings in New York State history. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh painted a picture of a calculating predator who had used dating apps and social media to target vulnerable women, luring them into relationships before ultimately killing them. The prosecution's case was built on a mountain of physical evidence, including DNA found at the burial site, digital forensics from David's computer showing his research into his victims, and testimony from survivors who had escaped David's clutches before it was too late. One of the most compelling witnesses was Sarah Chen, a 26-year-old nurse who had dated David briefly 2 years before he met Amanda. Sarah testified that David had become increasingly controlling and possessive during their short relationship, showing up at her workplace unannounced and following her when she went out with friends. The relationship ended abruptly when Sarah discovered David had been secretly photographing her while she slept. He had hundreds of pictures, Sarah told the court, her voice shaking. Pictures of me sleeping, pictures of me getting dressed, pictures taken through my bedroom window. When I confronted him, he just smiled and said he liked to remember beautiful moments. The defense, led by renowned criminal attorney Marcus Webb, attempted to portray David as a man suffering from severe mental illness, arguing that he was not responsible for his actions due to dissociative identity disorder. Webb brought in psychiatric experts who testified that David exhibited signs of multiple personality disorder, suggesting that an alternate personality had committed the murders while David's primary personality remained unaware. The defense also pointed to David's troubled childhood, marked by severe abuse at the hands of his stepfather and years spent in foster care. But the prosecution's case was overwhelming. Digital forensics experts testified that David's computer contained detailed plans for each murder, including maps of burial sites, research into his victims' daily routines, and even practice runs of his abduction methods. Most damning of all was a journal found hidden in David's apartment, written in his own handwriting, detailing his fantasies about controlling and ultimately killing the women he dated. One entry, dated just 2 weeks before his wedding to Amanda, read, "She's perfect, just like the others, but better. She trusts me completely. She has no idea what's coming." Amanda's family sat in the front row of the courtroom throughout the trial, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. Amanda's father, Robert Thompson, a retired police officer himself, struggled to understand how he had failed to see through David's facade. "He seemed like such a good man," Robert told reporters during a break in the proceedings. "He asked for my permission before proposing to Amanda. He looked me in the eye and promised he would take care of her. How do you prepare for something like this? How do you protect your child from a monster who looks like everyone else?" The most heartbreaking testimony came from Amanda's mother, Linda Thompson, who described the last conversation she had with her daughter. "Amanda called me the morning of the wedding," Linda said, tears streaming down her face. "She was so excited, so happy. She said she felt like the luckiest girl in the world. She said David made her feel safe." The irony of those words hung heavy in the courtroom, a reminder of how completely David had deceived everyone who knew him. As the trial progressed, more disturbing details about David's methods emerged. FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Patricia Moore testified that David fit the profile of an organized serial killer who used romantic relationships as a hunting ground. He was methodical, patient, and extremely manipulative, Dr. Moore explained. He would spend months, sometimes years, building trust with his victims before striking. The wedding was likely part of his fantasy, the ultimate expression of control over his victim. The prosecution also revealed that David had been planning to disappear after the honeymoon, having already established a false identity and opened bank accounts under an assumed name. Investigators found evidence that he had been researching remote locations in South America where he could start a new life, presumably to begin the cycle all over again with new victims. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution played Amanda's recorded message to the jury. The courtroom fell silent as Amanda's voice filled the air, her words serving as testimony from beyond the grave. When the recording ended, several jurors were visibly shaken, and even David's defense attorney appeared moved by the young woman's courage in her final days. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts, including 4 counts of first-degree murder and multiple charges of kidnapping and sexual assault. David showed no emotion as the verdict was read, staring straight ahead with the same cold detachment he had displayed throughout the trial. When given the opportunity to address the court before sentencing, David declined to speak, leaving Amanda's family without the closure of an explanation or apology. Judge Patricia Morrison sentenced David Richardson to life in prison without the possibility of parole, calling his crimes among the most heinous and calculated acts of violence this court has ever encountered. In her sentencing statement, Judge Morrison addressed Amanda's family directly. "While nothing can bring Amanda back or ease your pain, I hope you can find some measure of peace, knowing that this defendant will never again have the opportunity to harm another innocent person." But even with David behind bars, questions remained. Investigators continued to examine cold cases from across the country, looking for other possible victims. David's travels for work had taken him to dozens of cities over the past decade, and police departments nationwide began reviewing unsolved disappearances of young women who fit Amanda's profile. The FBI estimated that David may have been responsible for as many as 12 murders, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in recent American history. The case also sparked a broader conversation about online dating safety and the warning signs of predatory behavior. Amanda's story became a cautionary tale taught in self-defense classes and discussed in psychology courses across the country. Her family established the Amanda Thompson Foundation, dedicated to educating young women about relationship red flags and providing resources for those who suspect they may be in dangerous situations. What makes this case even more chilling is how normal David appeared to everyone around him. Co-workers described him as quiet but friendly. Neighbors saw him as polite and helpful, and Amanda's friends initially welcomed him into their circle. The mask of normalcy that David wore so effectively serves as a reminder that evil doesn't always announce itself with obvious warning signs. As we conclude this horrifying tale, we're left with haunting questions about the nature of evil and the vulnerability of trust. Amanda Thompson should have been starting her new life as a married woman, perhaps planning for children, building a home, growing old, with someone who truly loved her. Instead, her story serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the person we trust most can be the one who poses the greatest danger. What warning signs do you think Amanda might have missed? How can we better protect ourselves and our loved ones from predators who hide behind masks of charm and normalcy? Share your thoughts in the comments, and remember to like, subscribe, and share this story to help spread awareness about the importance of trusting our instincts when something doesn't feel right. Amanda's voice may have been silenced, but her story continues to serve as a warning that could save lives.